Alright, everyone wants to know, will Augmentation Evoker be meta again in War Within Season 1? Hi, I'm Tarithal, and if you don't know me, I've been an Augmentation Evoker since Season 2 of Dragonflight. I've had the pleasure of playing with some of the top players in the world. I'm going to use that experience to tell you exactly where I think Augmentation Evoker is going into Season 1, The War Within.
I'm dead on your...
What's going on?
I don't even know.
First off, it's worth asking, what exactly makes Aug Evoker good in keys? Historically, the most important thing Aug Evoker brought to keys was just pure survivability. Dragonflight was an extremely one-shotty expansion, where every dungeon it felt like there were dangerous mobs that would just kill you in an instant. Aug is particularly good at helping with group survivability in dungeons due to Shifting Sands, Black Attunement, Rescue Shields buffed by Black Attunement, Zephyr, and helping with tank and healer throughput via Ebb and Might, Source of Magic, and Blistering Scales. All of this, all while providing high, if not exceptional, damage to the dungeon via Ebb and Might. Even if other competitive DPS existed, Tuesday would roll around and once again it would be Afflicted Week, it would be Raging Week, it would be Incorp Week, and Aug Evoker would be there to be the anti-affix class. Fully kitted out and prepared to counteract anything the Wild Blizzard developers could throw at you. And even if the Aug Evoker wasn't bringing the most damage to the dungeon, the timers in Dragonflight were so lenient that often it was worth bringing the Aug Evoker anyways, just to make things easier for the rest of your group. So if Aug Evoker is so good, why even make this video? What's the point? What's changing in the War Within that would even prompt such a video? Well, going into the War Within, many of the things I just mentioned are going away. If you watched my overview on beta hero trees and rotations, you'll know that Blizzard made several changes to the Aug tree. Augs now do high personal damage via their hero trees, and many of their survivability traits that were once coveted in Dragonflight are difficult to obtain, or just in general less impactful. Aspect's Favor, which provides high Black Attunement to the group, is really a bad investment going into the War Within, as it's unfavorably placed on the tree. Additionally, it provides an ignorable amount of additional health at the cost of 2 talent points, which can be spent on other damaging nodes within the tree. Also, High Mastery won't really be obtainable either until you obtain fairly good gear going into Season 1, which decreases the survivability that you'll give to your teammates via Shifting Sands. Not to mention, the dungeons themselves in the War Within have changed. At least at the levels we're testing on beta, dungeons no longer one-shot you. Instead, they're now lethal in short windows, giving healers more time and opportunities to respond to the incoming threats in the dungeons. That's not to say people don't get one-shot in dungeons to miss kicks and bad positioning, but historically in Dragonflight, many of the scripted events in the dungeon would be too much to handle, and this does not appear to be the case in the key levels we've been testing on beta. In addition, Augs are no longer needed as the anti-affix class. Once you reach Keystone level 12, dungeons now drop all affixes except Fortified and Tyrannical. With Tyrannical being on every key, groups will favor compositions that can deal with bosses quickly, as battling Tyrannical bosses can take upwards of 30% or more of a dungeon's total timer. Last week, Blizzard decreased many of the Season 1 beta timers, and it now feels like one bad wipe in the dungeon can now be the end of your run. Even more punishing, deaths now cost 15 seconds to the dungeon timer, up from 5 seconds. So with all of these changes in mind, where exactly does Augmentation Evoker stand? I promise by the end of this video I will give you my opinion on Aug Evoker, and if I think it'll be meta or not, but I think that if anyone tells you definitively if Aug will be meta or not, they are just giving you their opinion since no one can know for sure. No one will really know for sure until everyone has max gear and testing the highest dungeons in Season 1. In Dragonflight, it often felt like the top key you could obtain was always determined by your survivability. You always had the damage to go higher, you just couldn't always live. With dungeons being less one-shotty, your success in the War Within is going to be determined by how much damage potential your group has, and if the tanks and healers are able to survive to match that potential.
Oh, it does heal him. Okay.
How much was it?
Oh,
it's
okay.
7% per?
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, okay. Okay. That does a lot.
What are we testing there?
If tanks and healers are able to survive an additional key level with Aug Evoker in the group that they otherwise wouldn't be able to, and you have enough DPS to meet the timer, then congratulations Aug Evokers, you once again are meta. In all seriousness, based on my experience in testing without Aug on beta, I think there's a pretty good equilibrium between the highest keys your DPS will be able to obtain and the level that tanks are able to push without Blistering Scales. Therefore, it really does come down to how much damage the Aug is contributing to the group. If the Aug is doing roughly the same damage as another DPS would be doing in its place, then you might as well bring the Aug to buff your tank and healer. However, If the AUG is contributing significantly less than another DPS would bring in its place, I do think the game is finally tuned in a way where alternatives will be considered to meet the timers. So in my opinion, does AUG damage suck? Throughout the last week, I've been combat logging multiple runs with and without Augmentation Evoker. My success rate has been about equal, with and without the Augmentation Evoker. When Mythic Plus was first released on beta, it wasn't atypical to see the Augmentation Evoker performing as the top DPS in the dungeon. After a few tuning cycles, my data currently shows AUG performing competitively, however trailing behind the top DPS by roughly 10 to 20% each dungeon. That being said, there are only a handful of classes that are outperforming Augmentation by pure numbers alone, and I think it's close enough for the buffs to tank and healer will make the class welcomed by most groups at the highest level. Alternatively, I think it's completely viable to run without an Augmentation Evoker and have a higher success. I personally think a DPS comp of, for example, DK, Mage, and Shaman, with maybe a Preservation Evoker, would outperform an AUG comp in its current state, or at the very least perform at the exact same level. And if it's anything like Dragonflight Season 1, I expect rerolling to be more difficult since the gap between freshly leveled characters and raid geared characters is far more extreme than a typical season. I expect there to be a pretty healthy meta with lots of viable tanks, healers, and DPS combinations, many of which do not include AUG Evoker. In fact, I don't expect us to see a meta until very late into Season 1. It's going to take a lot longer to gear than it did in Dragonflight, and I don't think we'll have enough time or data to flip into indecisive metas until very late in the season. That is, if we do at all. So do I think AUG Evoker will be meta? Many people have been playing AUG Evoker on beta and have been enjoying it thus far. I think its power and interest will carry it into Season 1 as a very popular pick. As for me, I think if I were going to do the absolute top keys in the world, and I had the power, I personally would elect to run a non-Evoker composition. However, I think the class is tuned extremely well and is a viable pick in the highest keys. I think if you're a group of friends trying to decide if you need an Augmentation Evoker going into the War Within, I think you can feel safe knowing that you don't absolutely need one going into Season 1. However, if you enjoy the playstyle or you just like having one along, I think that's completely fine too. You might think this is a cop-out answer, but I think the class is the most balanced in M+ it has ever been. It's right in the sweet spot of having enough damage to make it viable, all while making your tank and healer comfy. My current plan going into the expansion is to level my Evoker first. I'll be playing a mix of Preservation and Augmentation, maybe even a little Devastation in the mix. I think that about summarizes my thoughts on Augmentation Evoker and where I think it is in the meta, going into the War Within. If you like this content, I'm pretty new to YouTube, so let me know in the comments below, or feel free to stop by my Twitch at Tarithal. Appreciate you watching. Happy King.
All
Nope,
good?
they're just
All
walking
good.
through the bridge, by the way. They're just
All
walking
good.
through the bridge.
Oh, tons.
Wait, that giant's coming.
Oh, yeah.
All good.
He's on his own.
Welcome. Uh-oh.
Oh, there we
shit.
go. There we go.
dude.
Lust. We got a lust, I think.
Oh shit, I'm stunned. I'm so scared. And I'm dead.
Uh-oh.
Defensive.
Oh no.
This is
Kick.
good.
This
This is
guy's
good.
fucking massive.
This is good.
Holy fuck.
Okay, we gotta die.